Okay, so Spider-Man No Way Home is packed with Easter eggs, things you missed, and a lot of insane details that make it one of the densest comic book movies of all time. The film expertly brings together stories spanning 20 years in order to give us one of the biggest Spider-Man celebrations ever. Throughout this video, we're going to be breaking it all down, and there might even be some little cameos of our own, so make sure you stay until the end. Now, the movie centers around Tom Holland's Peter Parker as he accidentally breaks open the multiverse and brings across several versions of himself from the Marvel Universe. This includes Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in some scenes that would make Stan Lee proud. Although he passed away before he ever got to see the film, the creative team somewhat kept a cameo of him in the movie, and when Peter visits the donut shop at the end, we can see that MJ is serving an old man. This is actor Ed Voss, who according to the script is supposed to be a Stan Lee lookalike. This was done deliberately to make us look at the actor and get a feeling that we knew him from somewhere, even though we can't put our finger on it. Expertly laced into this scene, the audience get the exact same feeling that MJ has upon Peter reintroducing himself to her. She knows him from somewhere but can't tell where, and I absolutely love this line. The script even mentions that she has deja vu and a slight sense of recognition, but she can't put a finger on it. MJ wears the black dahlia necklace in the final scene, which you might remember was gifted to her at the end of Far From Home. In the movie, it was initially a fully formed flower, but after it was destroyed, it fractured into pieces like how we see. Still, she has a reason to wear it, and her subconsciousness is drawn towards it. Now, Stan Lee co-created Spider-Man with Steve Ditko, and he too gets a little reference with his name appearing in graffiti during the scene in which MJ and Peter are on the roof. There's also a nod to him on the Feast van, and when May pulls up to the Sanctorum, we can see it on the side. Mr. Dickovich was actually based on Ditko, and though we don't get a cameo by him, we do somewhat get a nod to the character with a guy asking for rent at the end of the film.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
Now, the movie of course brings all the live action Spider-Man together, and it plays upon several oh no, the multiverse, it's breaking open!
What's up, Paul? First and foremost, congratulations on becoming a father. That's truly awesome, man. Thanks for having me on this. I appreciate it. My two favorite Easter eggs for Spider-Man No Way Home were a real treat for me because when I found out that the three Spider-Men were going to be in one movie, I wanted two things from it. One was the classic pointing meme, and we got it. We got it in a non-traditional way in the movie, but I think we got it in a way that made the most sense. Zendaya's MJ calls out Peter, and then the three of them are like, which one is it? And they point to each other. You? Is it you? Is it you? Because I'm Peter. I think that was a very clever way to do it. And then the second thing that I wanted was for them to talk about the fact that Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker / Spider-Man has organic web shooters. He creates his own, and I wanted them to talk about that and address that since Tom Holland's and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man can't do that. They have to have web cartridges, and they addressed it perfectly. And they even kind of made fun of it a little bit when they ask, does it come out of anywhere else or is it only out of your wrists? And, you know, have you ever had like a web block before? And that was that leaked video that we saw where we thought Andrew Garfield was saying web blood, but it was a web block. And of course he's talking about Spider-Man 2. I had a web block. Why? Oh, existential crisis. I thought that was executed perfectly. And those were the two best Easter eggs for me because they were really a dream come true.
We managed to lock that down. Now there is of course another character who everyone knows as Spider-Man, and that is Miles Morales. First introduced in Into the Spider-Verse, we also know that his uncle Aaron is in the MCU, and that he's played by Donald Glover. He even mentions his nephew in Homecoming, and though Miles hasn't been cast yet, there is a line in No Way Home that's somewhat a nod to him.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
I don't apologize. There's gotta be a black Spider-Man somewhere out there.
Now if we look at the script, this line has a little note on the end of it that isn't said in the movie, which I like to think is setting up a live action Miles for the future. Now on top of the Spider-Men, all of Peter's villains come back, and there are several points in the movie where they repeat phrases from their prior films.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
My back! Oh, my back! My back. It's kind of stiff from all the swinging, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, I got a middle back thing too.
Really?
Yeah.
The power of the sun in the palm of my hand. The power of the sun in the palm of my hand. The power of the sun.
In the palm of your hand.
Go get him, Tiger.
Go get him, Tiger! Or should I say, Spider?
I missed the part where that's my problem.
No, mate, this isn't my problem. It's not my problem.
There's so many details like this and lots of foreshadowing in the film. One of the major events that happens is the death of Aunt May, which actually gets hinted towards right before she passes. There's a really cool scene where Peter's spider sense kicks in and he starts to walk around Happy's apartment looking for danger. The first thing Peter says is May, which is very much hinting towards her death at the hands of the Green Goblin. If you look at Peter's hand, it actually starts to move towards Norman when he's surveying the room, but he's interrupted by Sandman, which is when he drops it. Now speaking of spider sense, we see it in action just before the mirror dimension scene. Strange pushes Peter into his astral form and he attempts to grab the magic box from him that we're not going to try to pronounce here.
What is that?
It's an ancient relic, the Machina de Cadavis.
However, Peter's arm constantly moves and reacts to him attempting to grab it, which shows his spider sense is very much what happens when his body's on autopilot. If you look closely at his head, you can see somewhat of a wavy line effect coming off it, and this is exactly what it looked like in the comics. There's also a squirrel there, which... No, it can't. It can't be him. Now the spider sense keeps him out of harm's way, and the aforementioned scene with Osborn shows that it will pick up danger in his subconscious, even if he can't consciously determine where it is. During the scene in which a brick is thrown through the window, though Matt Murdock catches it, if you look closely at the footage, you'll see Peter raises his hand up to stop it because of his spider sense. Now the opening of the movie happens immediately after the first post-credits scene of Far From Home. They even brought back the actors from that film, and if you look behind MJ, you'll see that there's 3 people standing there, with a guy on the right holding his phone up to film the webhead. Cut back to Far From Home, and we can catch those same people, including the guy with the phone, showing how much they tried to line up these moments. It's at this point that we hear the words,
Whoa, please don't touch her, you're just a kid?
And this is actually a throwback to when Tobey Maguire's version was unmasked on the train.
Just a kid.
You might also catch that this is Penn Station, which was also shown at the end of Venom Let There Be Carnage in the post-credits scene. The newscaster who drops the report is an anchor that's actually appeared throughout the MCU at several points, and he's somewhat of a mainstay when it comes to reporting on the events of the universe. Peter swings throughout Times Square, and we can also see several posters for Rogers the Musical, which of course popped up throughout Hawkeye. There's also a giant sign with his face cut in half that has the mask on one side and Peter's on the other. This is iconography that often pops up in the source material whenever Peter's spider sense goes off. It also showed up in Civil War right after his identity was revealed, which is of course an element that this movie is based upon. He and MJ land on the Queensboro Bridge, and you might recognize this from the original Spider-Man movie. Green Goblin dropped MJ over the edge of it, and she somewhat ends up falling over it in this one too, when Peter jumps down with her. It is a bit of a reach, that I'll admit. Now, there are other things from that movie that appear, namely the Roosevelt Island tramway car, which Goblin 2 held up in that movie. This also popped up in Amazing Spider-Man 2 when Peter was researching his father's secret lab, and it's one of the first many bits of the film that foreshadow the two showing up. We then catch Flash Thompson, and throughout the movie he promotes his book Flashpoint, available in all good bookshops now. A Flashpoint might actually be a nod to the DC story of the same name, in which Flash broke the multiverse open after traveling back in time. That story is going to be explored in the upcoming Flash movie, and this might be Marvel doing a bit of a joke to DC as they got there first in the films. Better not be though, or I'm going to kick off. I'm going to kick off if there's any jokes about anything. Now there's such a slick moment here, and I love how when Peter travels past Flash Thompson, you can see him basically web up the grate, drop through the hole, and then pull the grate back on top so that he has something for his webbing to hang off when he goes into the sewer. Very, very slick, and he travels through the subway, which is where Tobey fought Sandman in Spider-Man 3. As he exits the sewer, he pulls the manhole cover closed using his web, and according to the Easter egg special features on the Blu-ray, this is a nod to the final shot of Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, in which he grabbed a cover and swung it around with his webs. Peter is now outside Delmars, which you might recognize as being the deli from Homecoming. If you cast your mind back to that movie, then you'll recall it was destroyed after the quote-unquote Avengers bank robber scene, and this now has a number 3 on the sign as a reference to the third Spider-Man movie. This also appeared in the extended version of Far From Home, which was only released in theaters, and if we count that, then yeah, they are right, this is its third appearance. Other callbacks to Homecoming happened just after this, with Peter wearing the I Survived My Trip to New York t-shirt that he wore after Tony took his suit away. Holland has been on the heavy spoilers diet though, and bulked the f*** up. You can actually see this in the shirt, and if you place them side by side, you'll notice it was way baggier on him in Homecoming. You chump.
See you, chump.
I love this, and Peter walks around the home closing all the blinds. The last one he gets to won't close, and he webs this shut in a really nice bit of attention to detail. Later on, they end up covering these windows up with newspapers, and we can read one with the headline Web of Destruction. He's taken away by Damage Control, who debuted in Homecoming, and I love how the opening of the movie has the likes of them, the T-shirt, and Delmars all calling back to Holland's first movie for the first act of the film. When Damage Control show up, we can also catch a photo of MJ and Ned at the Homecoming party, in which Peter got called Penis Parker.
Penis Parker, what's up? So where's your pal Spider-Man? Let me guess, in Canada with your imaginary girlfriend?
Now there's also Ty Bomber, which is a nod to Ned and Peter making a Death Star together. When he's questioned by Damage Control, he also wears the t-shirt that he had on at the start of Homecoming when Tony and Happy dropped him off at his home. It's at this part that they progress into the Far From Home Easter eggs, and we get the Edith glasses as well as the Iron Spider suit charging station. Damage Control confiscate all the tech Peter owns except for the Iron Spider suit, which he has on the bridge. Now this is because it wasn't in the charging station at the time, and my guess is that Peter had it on during those scenes. When Peter lands at the bridge, we can hear a male AI voice instead of Karen, and this is because the Stark network is unavailable. All the drones in either glasses get seized, so it's likely that the entire network was down, which is why Peter doesn't have access to it. Now, Agent Cleary says that Nick Fury has been off-world for a year, and this is because Talos was masquerading as him for the events of the prior film. Throughout this is the news report from the Daily Bugle, which features several images. There's one in which a sketch of Spider-Man can be seen with the headline Iron Man Jr., which is an in-joke on how Peter is often called out by people who think the MCU version needs to stand on his own 2 feet. The magazine cover pops up later on in the movie when we catch Strange walking past a stand. Peter gets green paint thrown over him as well, and this explains why he has to turn the suit inside out, as he can't get it out until May steps in. There's also a news report, and we can see along the bottom that there's a warrant out for Night Monkey, calling back to Far From Home. They also use an image of Happy Hogan looking like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, which is what he donned at the start of Iron Man 3. Charlie Cox pops up in one of the best cameos in a movie, and he catches a brick that's thrown at him through the window. Also, look at this phone call, yeah?
That's great. Thank you.
I don't think anyone is on the other end of that. The guy doesn't even hang up. Now, Jon Favreau, of course, played Foggy Nelson in the Daredevil movie, and it's nice that the two have a bit of back and forth where Matt says he needs to lawyer up. At this point, the brick comes through the window, and if you pay close attention to it, you'll notice that the believe has been misspelled to remove the lie part of the word. This could show that Mysterio's supporters can't even spell believe, and that they were duped by the Master of Illusions. Now, Matt is big news for the MCU, and Kingpin, of course, also appeared in Hawkeye recently. Maybe Matt could have stopped by Westview in order to help Wanda learn how to cope without Vision. Now, according to Vincent D'Onofrio, all the Netflix shows are now canon, so you better not embarrass me in front of Vanessa. I've told her this video is going to get a lot of likes, so if you're enjoying it, then please hit the thumbs up button. We do videos like this every week, so if you're enjoying it, then use your spoiler sense and make sure you subscribe. Oh no, you've hit the button too hard. The multiverse, it's cracked open again!
So, Happy's apartment is also full of cool callbacks, and we see the badges that he had on in Iron Man 3 when he was head of security. Later on, we learn that there is a fabricator there as well, which showed up at the end of Far From Home. And right beside that, we can catch the word slot, which is a reference to the comic book writer Dan Slott, who happened to be at a group dinner I attended a while back at Bear Burger here in New York City. Awesome burgers, awesome guy. I loved his Spider-Man run, by the way. Loved it! Superior Spider-Man? He was superior! I wish Dan Slott was still on that title, because now it's unreadable. Are you reading Spider-Man? Maybe you like it. I haven't read Spider-Man for a while, and it makes me sad, especially when I'm reminded of Dan Slott. Ooh, well. There's also Dumb E, the robotic arm that was the first invention Tony Stark ever created. This appeared in the Iron Man trilogy because it got salvaged at the end of Iron Man 3 and could then later be seen in Homecoming at Stark Tower.
Thank you, Grace. And Dummy plays a big part later on as Peter webs Goblin's hand to it, which is something that he's done in a lot of the movies. He webbed Tony's hand to the door in Civil War, webbed Aaron's hand to his car boot in Homecoming, and the guy just does it as a reaction to stop people from moving. Peter and MJ FaceTime one another, and above her head, you can catch several of the sketches that she drew during detention in Homecoming. This includes Coach Wilson, along with several photos from Venice in Far From Home. Cut to Betty Brant reporting on Peter going back to school, and this pulls from the storyline Brand New Day, in which he became a reporter instead of a desk clerk for the Daily Bugle. The movie is clearly based on the comic One More Day, which led into Brand New Day, and it cribs several plot points from it. After Civil War, Peter travelled to Doctor Strange to see if there was a way to help with Aunt May, who had been shot by one of Kingpin's assassins. The Sanctorum was extremely run down, and this is somewhat mirrored in the movie when we catch it covered in snow. Strange tried several spells, but he couldn't heal May, and thus Peter turned to Mephisto. Not him again, not that squirrel. Now Mephisto saved her in exchange for Peter and Mary Jane's love, and to make sure no more assassins were sent after those close to him, he erased the knowledge from people's minds that he was Spider-Man. One of the signs makes Peter out to be the devil, possibly linking to this, or possibly a massive reach across the multiverse.
Hey Paul, Josh from Den of Nerds here, and my favorite Spider-Man No Way Home Easter egg has to be the lighting on Tobey Maguire's dick. Even though I had bought a ticket and was sitting in a theater, the lighting looked so weird I wasn't sure if what I was looking at was actually real. There are actually a couple that I really enjoyed. I liked it when Betty said go get him Tiger when reporting from Midtown High. This is obviously something that Mary Jane says from the comics, and I love when they sprinkle in those sweet little callbacks to the funny book. You also hear the do a flip guy from Shang-Chi and Spider-Man Homecoming, and that dude's just hilarious. And then randomly, the person that says, are you going to have his spider babies, is apparently Zendaya's personal assistant, which you told me about, Paul, so that I actually looked like I knew what I was doing in this segment on your video. Thanks a lot, bud.
Thanks Josh for upstaging me on my video. Voice sounds much better than mine, much deeper, and it really pisses me off. He's got the same microphone, it does my head in every time I watch it. Now inside the school we see the wall of legendary science figures that popped up in Homecoming. Amongst these are Howard Stark, Erskine from Captain America, and Hank Pym. They have a trophy case set out for Peter, and after the movie I'm unsure how this would work, with everyone forgetting, but we could be stuck here all day arguing about the ending of this film. Now there is a photo of MJ and Peter in Venice, and if you look closely at it, you can see Mr. Harrington has cut himself out and pasted himself into it. Harrington actually appeared in The Incredible Hulk as a scientist, and since then he's gone on to get a job as a teacher at the school. There's also a trophy for Peter's decathlon, which was a big plot point in Homecoming.
Some suggest that Parker's powers include the male spider's ability to hypnotize females, which he used to seduce Jones Watson into his cult of personality.
Now on the rooftop, MJ reads an article about how Peter has hypnotized her, and this foreshadows the ending of the movie in which he hypnotizes everyone into forgetting about him. We see Dummy slowly building Peter's Death Star, and it then gets dropped on the floor when May brings the MIT letter in. This is just like how Ned dropped it upon finding out that Peter was Spider-Man, and the Lego Death Star Easter eggs, they don't stop there. Now in Homecoming we were introduced to Ned through the Palpatine figure that he held up to Peter's head. This is the first time that we met the character, and Peter actually kept this figure with him in the apartment. At the end of the movie, it pops up in a quick shot, and it definitely reminds the character what he's fighting for. After seeing a hanging wizard decoration for Halloween, Peter then has the idea to go to Doctor Strange. Now whilst the central one doesn't really look like the sorcerer, if you look at the heads on the left and right, they both have little beards that make them look like Steven. From this point he travels out of the Sanctorum, which we see is covered in snow. We learn this is because Wong left open a gateway that allowed a blizzard to come in. We saw these gateways in the Doctor Strange movie, and as Wong walks in, you can catch a contraption on the wall behind him. This is the bondage. Can I say that? This is the bondage suit that Strange threw on Caecilius in that movie in order to trap him in bondage. Bondage. James Bondage I'm talking about there.
You serious?
It's here we discover Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme as he got in on a technicality during the snap, and it's how I'm going to become the best breakdowner ever after I kill every other one out there. I'm coming for you, Ryan, you chump.
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Arey.
Now Doctor Strange also has a mug that says for fuck's sake on it, which is what I imagine security at Sony to be thinking after all these leaks. The spell gets broken 5 times, and this is why 5 villains are able to come into the MCU. However, there is also 2 Peters and Venom, who we learned in Let There Be Carnage finds out Spider-Man's identity because of the symbiote collective consciousness that spans through the multiverse. Whilst this is going on, we can see Strange's helper and that little ornament thingy falling apart, which also happened in Thor Ragnarok. The shape of the lizard is formed in the multiversal web, and later on when the same thing happens at the end of the movie, there's more figures you can catch. This includes Kraven the Hunter, the Scorpion, Rhino, and possibly Madame Web, who we know is getting a spin-off movie very soon. According to the Easter egg special features, There's also the four-armed Spider-Man there, but I can't see it, so maybe you should go and watch that breakdown instead, you sucker.
See ya, chump.
Now we cut to the bridge scene, and we get Peter flying in on the wingsuit, which he also used during Homecoming. Peter rushes past several cars, and in one we can see kids watching the Daily Bugle report that's being filmed from a helicopter. This is actually showing the camera shot from when he was just waving at the chopper, and as we know, there's normally a 7-second delay on broadcasts going live. Now Doc Ock arrives and tries to hold him up to the Daily Bugle helicopter. This is symbolic on a number of levels, as it's pretty much showing how everything the Bugle threw at him has been transformed into a weapon that has the power to kill him just as much as his enemies. The river is the same one Ock died in during Spider-Man 2, and we get one of the license plates that teases his debut. You can catch 63ASM3, which stands for the year 1963, Amazing Spider-Man issue number 3. This introduced the villain, who arrives not long after and starts doing more reaches than we've done in this whole video. The taxi behind Peter also has the numbers 1228, possibly a reference to Spider-Man 12, which featured Doc Ock that was then fleshed out further during a flashback in issue 28. Just googling numbers all day I was, and to be fair, I did say we would be reaching. Now at one point Peter climbs up one of the cars as it falls, which is somewhat reminiscent of when Tobey climbed up the brick wall during his fight with Harry in Spider-Man 3. There's more callbacks to that scene as Peter is wearing a similar suit to what Tobey had on, and at one point he gets his tie sliced in half. This is something that also happened to Tobey during that movie when Harry cut it, and I love how these two moments just line up so perfectly. Now the car that gets thrown over the edge which Peter webs up also looks a lot like the one that went over the bridge in The Amazing Spider-Man, and if it's not, well, sometimes you have to let your boy reach. I've warned you enough times about that. Now Doc Ock goes to crush Peter's head, and this is something that he did in the bank scene against Tobey Maguire. Wakanda forever! Peter then takes the boom as tech before the Goblin arrives to ruin everything, like the next guy in the video.
Hey Paul, Ryan from Screen Crush here. Congrats on having twins. You're gonna make a great dad.
Yeah man, congratulations. Babies are weird and squishy, but if you want one, that's awesome.
Okay, so here's an Easter egg for your breakdown video. When Norman Osborn tells the Goblin to go away, like Gollum,
and never come back.
The scene is shot to parallel when Peter number 2 gave up being Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. And that's it. That's all you get from me. Stop being lazy. Do your job.
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Arey!
Must close the multiverse!
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Arey!
Can't have losers like Ryan Arey ruining the video!
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Arey!
Now the comic Spider-Man No More was also brought up in Spider-Man 2 as one of the Daily Bugle headlines. We now know from concept art that it was originally going to be America's Chavez who brought Tobey and Andrew across, but because the release dates of the movie switched up, we got Ned doing it instead. In the basement of the Sanctorum, they start to look on TikTok for the Green Goblin and get these funny little elf videos. MJ also picks up a Goaty template box, and hey Strange, I'm not judging, the guy's hands are still shaking, so yeah, you do what you gotta do to keep that trim, mate. Now Ned's laptop also has a This Is Fine sticker on it, which is a carryover from Homecoming, showing that the guy is still using the same one. Electro becomes the first target, and he appears in a Terminator-esque lightning storm, butt naked, just like Arnie did. Later on in the movie, when his powers start up, he also gets a bowl covering his face that's very reminiscent of the mask that he wore in the comics originally. When Peter dukes it out with him, he ends up tying together several webs, and this is extremely similar to what Andrew Garfield's version did in his second film. Sandman helps out, and the fight ends with Electro saying that he hates the woods.
I hate the woods.
I bet the universe.
This is because there isn't really that much electricity there, unlike the city, which is of course filled with it. Now he hates the woods, and I hate sand because it gets everywhere, and we have a nice bit of attention to detail when Peter smacks Sandman's hand in order to say thanks. He actually hits it so hard that it completely disappears, and I appreciate that. Let's just hope it's not the hand that he uses for... I'm sorry, I can't say that. Now, after learning Goblin is at Feast, Peter heads there. Outside there's a poster for Spider-Man, and at the beginning of Far From Home, he of course did the event with Feast for Aunt May. This has been spray painted with Mysterio was right, and we can also see that the phone number is 1-800-GIVE-FEAST, which is because it's a charity. Now though it seemed like he destroyed the Goblin identity, we can catch from Norman's clothes that he's still there. The Goblin's colours are of course green and purple, and Norman still having these here shows that it's buried in his subconscious. May also wears blue and red, which are of course the colours of Spider-Man. It's not too long before Norman kills her, and her standing here in these colours sets up them being opposite sides later on.
Lost. And I don't mean just in the cosmos, I mean in his mind.
Now I love how you can catch Norman in the background stealing donuts, and it really paints him out as a sympathetic figure. Cut to the Daily Bugle studio, which is of course an InfoWars-esque outlet. It's had a major update since the start of the movie, and much like Alex Jones, J. Jonah is now pushing supplements. We can see a report asking why Spider-Man hates the national monuments, and this has the Washington Monument on it, which he climbed up and damaged during the events of Homecoming. This of course also foreshadows how he destroys the Statue of Liberty at the end of the film, and my god, the guy is a spider menace. Now they return to the Sanctorum, and there's several nods to other movies, namely the villains' deaths and how he left them. Peter then grabs Strange's box, and he opens portals to trap him with his own webs, which feels like it was ripped right out of the Portal games. If you look at the last one, you can see Spider-Man actually holding onto his foot with his web, which dangles him midair. Strange then pushes him out of his body into his astral form in a shot that plays heavily on the way this was done by the Ancient One in Doctor Strange. Strange plans to send him into the mirror dimension, and the multiverse, it's breaking open again.
Hello, Paul. It's me, Erik Voss, traveling across the YouTube multiverse to share with you some Easter eggs I spotted in No Way Home. And you know what? I'm actually going to do it in a nice, wholesome way because I'm really deeply infatuated with you and your work. And I don't want commenters not in on the joke to think that there's some drama between us, like there is between you and that garbage peddler Ryan Arey at Screen Crush. So here we go. Strange chases after Peter, and he goes past a newsstand with several Easter eggs. Firstly, on the top row is the Time magazine issue, which has the Iron Man Jr. story that was shown at the Daily Bugle report. However, there's also Liz Allen on the cover of People magazine. She's calling Peter a liar! And as we know from Homecoming, he had her father locked up, which may be something that they explore in Morbius. Now, at this point, Strange throws his cloak after Peter and it wraps around his neck, which is a nod to the comic What If Spider-Man had never become a crime fighter. This is also something that popped up in the What If episode during the zombie outbreak. They travel into the mirror dimension, which is actually the barrier between our two channels now being severed. Bye-bye!
Now they fly through a mirror dimension world, and Strange runs a train on Peter. Not like that. Now this is something that Mysterio didn't borrow from home, and there was of course the famous train scene in Spider-Man 2, which this one seems to be the exact same model as. Exact same model as that train. What a low point in the video. You can tell I wrote this tired after staying up all night with the kids. They never let me get any sleep. Now if you pay close attention to the trees in Central Park, you might notice all the leaves are brown and the sky is grey. This is because the movie is set in the fall, which we can tell by the donut shop owner telling MJ to take the Halloween decorations down.
Jones, I told you to take down the Halloween decorations.
Actually, that was Sasha, so...
Enough attitude, just do it.
The movie of course ends in winter due to the snow, so it looks like Peter actually spent a couple of months on his own getting used to his anonymity before going to her. I love how as they travel further into the desert, the skyscrapers turn themselves into cavernous rocks, and it also makes me wonder if Strange was taking him out this far because it's a good place to hide a body. Now Peter manages to beat Strange by recognizing the Archimedean spiral, and he then uses his knowledge of maths to beat magic. From here they all go to Happy's apartment, and as Electro passes the camera, it starts to glitch because he interferes with the frequency of it. They build a new nano chip for Doc Ock, and the tentacle lights turn from red to white after it's applied. In Spider-Man 2, we learn that this differentiates when they're in attack mode, and when they're white, Ock is in control. There's a really cool bit of attention to detail when Peter throws his headset at the bench, and it actually glitches the hologram as it passes through it. This didn't exist when they were filming it, and I love how visual effects artists put these kinds of things in, as it shows they're paying attention to what's going on in the scene. He gives the nanotech back to Peter, and this smaller section of nanobytes goes over his Spidey suit to create a new one that he wears throughout the film. We see Norman working away, and in the bottom of this shot, you can catch the photo of Iron Man that was based on the one used for Obama's presidential run. Just as Peter's spider sense kicks in, we can catch another nod to Iron Man 2, namely the Stark Expo model hanging in the back. This was what Tony used to create a new element, and it's so cool seeing it at the back of Happy's. Goblin ends up revealing himself, and he calls Doc Ock a lapdog, which is somewhat of a callback to earlier in the movie when Otto said the following.
Fix? You mean like a dog?
Now Peter goes toe-to-toe with him, and it's one of the most brutal fights in the movie. Norman actually punches him so hard at one point that it breaks one of the stairs, and goddamn, guy smashed him like you should smash that like button. Now like me and my viewers with my bad jokes, Peter keeps punishing him until he finally breaks him, and he just goes fully insane, laughing at whatever Peter throws at him. Goblin kills May and bombs her in her home, much like he did to Rosemary Harris in the first Spider-Man movie. Finish the prayer, you c***. Now May also says the famous words,
You have power. And with great power, there must also come great responsibility.
Now she does change this up from the more typical version, however this is the way it was originally phrased the first time it was dropped in the comics. May's death scene is a really emotional one, and it happens in a similar way framing wise to how Ben passed away in the first Spider-Man movie. MJ and Ned bring across Tobey and Andrew, and you can also catch a sewing machine in the scene which gets a bit of attention drawn to it. The script says that Peter's new costume at the end of the movie is somewhat of a combination of Tobey and Andrew's, and here they are, introduced together with a focus on the sewing machine. Peter later ends up using a machine to stitch them all together, and as I've been saying, it's all connected. And Ned's grandma's furniture also has plastic wrapping over it, which hey, we've all got that kind of relative in the family. YouTube itself is very much like a family, and oh my god, it's happening again.
Hello, this is Charlie from Emergency Awesome. My favorite Spider-Man No Way Home Easter egg is actually Andrew Garfield saving Tom Holland's MJ, fully redeeming himself for not being able to save his own Gwen Stacy. The minute we all saw that trailer, we saw her falling, we saw the hand reach out, everyone instantly thought, wouldn't it be amazing if Andrew Garfield is going to be in this film if he were the person to save MJ? Even Andrew Garfield himself said that that was one of his favorite scenes in the film. He even revealed that was part of the pitch that Marvel and Sony gave to him, that his character would be having a moment like that in the film. It is the perfect example of fan service done right.
Now Andrew and Tobey very much want to save Peter from walking down the dark path that they did. Tobey talks about how he went out to get revenge on the person he believed killed Uncle Ben and that this didn't fix the problem.
I got what I wanted. It didn't make it better.
Later on in the movie, he stops Peter from killing Norman Osborn, which saves him from the life of regret that Tobey ended up having. This is done in more subtle ways with Garfield, who talks about how after he lost Gwen that he ended up becoming more brutal.
Try to keep going, try to keep being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because I know that's what she would have wanted, but at some point I stopped pulling my punches.
Now Andrew saves MJ later on, and in doing this it stops Tom Holland's version from losing the person that he loves. The pair both stop him from dealing with the same mistakes that they did, and thus they very much right the wrongs of their own past. I absolutely love how rather than killing the villains, the movie is about curing them, and it really shows that this is what we do. Well, they do, not me, I'm a dickhead, and I'll probably spoil the whole movie for you. Now they all bring up the great power and great responsibility line, which shows it's very much tied into the character's origin story across the entire multiverse. From this point, we learn a lot about them, and I haven't got a good insert for a multiverse person here, but yeah, here's everything always.
What's going on, guys? It's Michael Roman from Everything Always. My favorite line in the entire film is really one for me that changes shapes after you've seen it a couple of times. When we first hear Tobey tell Andrew not to give up, that even though it was complicated, him and MJ were able to make it work. We're all so hyped in that first viewing to see Tobey and Andrew on screen, we take it as face value and just information about what happened in the Sam Raimi verse after the film stopped getting made. And maybe if you weren't completely emotionally overwhelmed by the ending of the first time you saw it, in a way that I was not, you were able to put together the foreshadowing if he was able to make it work with his MJ, no matter how things have gotten complicated in the MCU, maybe Tom Holland's Peter Parker and Zendaya's MJ can make it work too. But after I had seen the film a couple of times, I realized the importance of that line leading into Act 3 is because Andrew, moments later, is going to put some closure to what happened with Gwen by saving our MCU's MJ. And in that, coupled with the advice by Tobey, he has a chance now in his future not to give up, and even though it'll be complicated, make it work. And so for me, that's one of my favorite lines because it really gives me hope for the future of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man.
Now the lab has the three pointing at each other, which Cosmic Wonder talked about before. This meme was also brought up in Into the Spider-Verse, and the group point at each other 3 times in the film. This happens here in the lab, on the scaffolding, and during the credits we can catch a sketch of them all doing it to 3's the magic number. Sony also just released a behind the scenes image of the 3 pointing at each other. I think this might be the best photo ever made. Absolute classic. Now just before the fight they have some back and forth banter and give nods to the villains that they fought. This includes Thanos, an alien in Venom, and Andrew talks about the Rhino, who's just a Russian guy in a suit. Tobey says he's amazing, and he's the amazing Spider-Man. Do you see? Got all the Easter eggs in this video. We do. Without that every Easter egg title, we didn't lie. Now this scene itself is absolutely amazing, and we watch as the Spider-Men learn to work together. Their swing is incredible, and they help each other through the air before landing on the Statue of Liberty's head. The statue now has a Captain America shield on it, which shows that he's celebrated much in the same way that Tony was after Endgame. Cap was initially outlawed for breaking the Sokovia Accords, but this shows that society has accepted him once more with open arms after he saved the universe. Sam Wilson has of course also taken up the mantle, and this has shown that it's very much back in the official arms of what the government deem is acceptable. When Electro is in Happy's home, you can also see the approval rating for the change-up, and it actually shows that people are against them altering the way it looks. Now speaking of approval rating, the approval rating of this video is just about to drop.
So at the end of the movie, Doc Ock asks Peter how he's doing, and Peter says he's trying to do better. This is a direct callback to Spider-Man 2, where Peter says the exact same thing after Doc Ock calls him brilliant, but lazy.
Parker, now I remember you. You're Connor's student. Tells me you're brilliant. He also tells me you're lazy.
Trying to do better.
You're all grown up. How are you?
Trying to do better.
Another moment I loved is when Tobey Maguire talks about issues with his back and Andrew Garfield has to crack it. This is a direct callback to Mysterio actor Jake Gyllenhaal, who starred in the movie Brokeback Mountain. Wait, that's not right. No, that's a callback to Spider-Man 2 when Tobey Maguire hurts his back. That's what it is. That's why it's a great Easter egg. Also at the beginning of the movie, Peter and MJ stop on top of the Queensboro Bridge. This is also the same bridge where I dropped my ex-girl. This is also the same bridge where Green Goblin notoriously dropped MJ in Spider-Man 1. Not someone I used to know.
They managed, sorry about that, they managed to say, I love you, Greg. Not really though, you're crap. No, they managed to save all the villains in ways that reference the prior movies. Andrew gets electrocuted, and it looks very similar to how it happened in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. You can actually see it messes up his suit really badly, and if you zoom in on his mask, it cracks the lens on the iris. Both he and Tobey get electrocuted, but Andrew recovers a lot quicker, and this is because he insulated his suit during Amazing Spider-Man 2. Some of the shots from the original films are even used, and there are deleted moments from those movies that show their transformations. You might remember that Sandman was transformed by a spinning super collider, and this is somewhat referenced in the miniature device that turns him back. Lizard chases MJ and Ned through a lab, and this calls back to when he fought Spider-Man in the first Garfield film. At this point, Osborn swoops in and says, "Can Spider-Man come out to play?"
Can the Spider-Man come out to play?
Can Spider-Man come out to play?
Now destroying the box tears open reality, and MJ falls in a nod to Gwen Stacy's death. Andrew saves her, learning from his mistakes, and instead of using a web to catch her, he uses his arms to cushion the blow. Now at this point, Holland's version thinks MJ is dead, as he didn't see Garfield save her. He goes wild on Osborn and does some moves that are very similar to the ones from the PlayStation games. However, Tobey stops him, and this shares similar iconography to when the character pulled the same stance to Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2. Doctor Strange carries out the spell to make us forget someone I can't quite remember, and we see how the world changes for this character. Sometimes when you try to remember something, it breaks open the multiverse.
What's up, guys? It's Supes. Now, it's at this point in the movie that Tom, Tobey, and Andrew say goodbye to each other. The trio hug it out and say the words, "This is what we do," which calls back to when May said it at Feast.
You know, it's what we do.
Look around you. This is what we do. We help people.
That's what we do.
Peter wanted to back away from the problem, but he was inspired by May, who said that they help people. This is a line that has a lot of meaning for the ending, as the Peters, of course, wanted to heal the villains rather than hurt them. It shows that at their core, they have these values to help people no matter what, and it makes May's inspiration hang over the movie even more.
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Arey.
The power of the gun in the palm of my hand.
Shut the f*** up, Ryan Arey.
Dr. Gloctopus at your service. As Andrew disappears, we see him do a peace sign, and this might actually be a little nod to the meme where that kid does one before disappearing. Ned and MJ get into MIT, and Peter ends up studying for his GED. She serves him a coffee cup that has popped up in several of the Netflix shows, and it says, "We are happy to serve you," which somewhat symbolizes Peter's new life choice. Now from his room, he listens to police frequencies, and this is a reference to the opening of the PlayStation game in which he does the same thing. And May's grave also has the exact words, "When you help someone, you help everyone." This too also popped up in the game, and I love how there's these consistencies throughout all of the multiverse. Peter swings off into the night sky, and the script tells us that he can now fully focus on being Spider-Man. We get a shot where his face comes towards the camera, and we zoom in on his eye. This is also the same way that the first Spider-Man movie ended, and it very much brings everything full circle from that movie 20 years ago. Peter Parker is no more, but Spider-Man is, and rather than having to deal with living a double life, he can now focus on the one that betters people's lives instead of putting them in danger. And that's the full movie, and huge thank you to everyone who contributed to this video. All those that featured in it are people I massively respect, but this is how I'm gonna act if I ever see you in real life. I'm just kidding, I love you 1000.
The ad said 3,000.
As for you watching, I really hope that you guys enjoyed it, and we have a breakdown of Spider-Man 2 on screen right now. Hopefully you see it over there right after this, but if not, I'm gonna forget you and never speak about you again. You weigh up what you want to do, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. You take care of yourself. Peace.